are streaming. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hi, my name's Jared Bendis, and today we are going to continue the tutorial we started last time. And this is how to make a rail shooter in GameMaker Studio. It's not just a coding demo, it's a complete demo. It's going to be Photoshop, it's going to be sort of everything you can imagine. So let's get out of this window here. I'm going to put the other window up so I can see what's going on. That is correct, folks. If you are watching me live, I actually have the chat window up, so I can watch you if you're watching me, if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to say something snarky, because I am listening. All right, so where do we leave off? Well, I'm going to come back over here. It's kind of weird. I know everyone's going to see me with my glasses in this funny sort of way. That's kind of how I work with my glasses, because I can see the screen here, and then I kind of come in and out, so I apologize. All right, so where did we leave off last time? Let's take a look. We are building our entire game using only assets that we have edited from the Cleveland Museum of Art's Open Access Collection. Again, I work for the Cleveland Institute of Art, so I like to give a big shout out to the Cleveland Museum of Art for putting these assets online. My students, of course, know they cannot use assets they get online. They have to draw everything from scratch. So some of the things that I do are going to be a little bit different, especially when it comes to sort of how I'm going to tweak some of the graphics for it. So far, I've got this beautiful background. Look at this beautiful background. My bad guys are these things over here, those helmets, and of course, this is my hero. My hero can move up and down. Oh, look at that. He's moving up and down. He hits the wall, which is good. Not only does he collide with the wall, he kind of skates into it. And no matter what happens, he touches all the way to the top of the wall, which is very, very good. And then lastly, he can shoot this some sort of a weird sort of a blade, and of course when the blades go off the screen, they get destroyed, which is very important because we don't want them going off forever. And of course, if the blade hits the other bad guy, they get destroyed as well. So we have a very bad video game. There we go. I mean, I can shoot as much as I want, and you can see the bad guys are all gone. And I can move up and down. Still some questions about whether or not the size is correct. I like the shape of our hero and our bad guy, but we're going to get that in a second. All right, so that's where we've gotten to so far. And if you watched the last video, probably spent the first 45 minutes selecting my graphics, editing my graphics, and really deciding what I was going to do with them, and probably the last half an hour really putting this together. So there you go. So what do we need to do now? So that's what we've got. Now, what's the next step? That's always the big question. Well, the next step in this case is I want to work on bringing things a little bit to life. And what that means is I'd like to create a series of animations. Now, when I animate, I've got to think about what my hero does. I'm just going to think about my hero for a second. So what can my hero do? My hero can go up. My hero can go down. My hero can idle. So that's 3 different animations right there. An up animation, a down animation, and an idle animation. Now, I'll be honest with you, it could be that an idle animation would be good enough. Hey, it's kind of like a wiggle, wiggle, wiggle thing, and it's wiggle up and wiggle down. But I want to have more animations here because I want to make sure that you know about the ins and outs of a more complex situation. So we're going to do it where I'm going to create those 3 animations. There's also the firing animation, something that happens when it fires. So that would be a 4th animation. And then lastly, we're probably going to do it right now, even though we don't need to do it just yet, would be the death animation. We want to make sure that I have an animation for when it dies, though we're actually not going to die tonight at all. It's kind of fun when you think about that death is something you have to add. By default, when you start building a game, you're in God mode because you have to animate. You have to actually program death in. So for my hero, that's up and down and idle and shoot and die. That's 5 different animations. Now, obviously, I want them to sort of relate to each other. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop and I'm going to do these really, and they're not going to be great animations as I'm going to be doing some basic photo manipulation. And I'm going to do it relatively quickly in front of you before I can implement them. That's going to be part 1. Part 2 is what else is going to animate? Well, let's take a look at that. I have my hero bullet. Now, my hero bullet I can animate by actually going into Photoshop or animating it, but I also probably can animate it just inside of GameMaker because there's a lot to be done in that. All right, and then what's the last thing I want to do tonight? I'm gonna actually not animate, but I'm gonna just have my enemies start to move. And then if the enemies move and I can delete them and I can kill them, then I'm really gonna be into a game. And what I'm trying to do is follow along how much my students have had to do in their homework. And this is sort of like a reference for that. It's just kind of funny because I imagine myself, next year doing another tutorial video. And while you're like, well, didn't you do this tutorial last year? I'm really trying to keep on pace with what I'm doing with my students. And, I change things every year, a little bit of here, a little bit there. So hopefully this is making sense for you. No, I'm not doing a full explanation of everything I'm doing. I mean, I'm talking you through it all, but I'm not doing it so terribly slow because, again, if you want this education, you should enroll in my class. All right, let's keep going. So I'm going to come out of here and I'm going to go to Photoshop. Yay, Photoshop. And if I look in my folder, you're going to realize that last week when I did this, I started with the full high resolution TIFF. Thank you very much, Cleveland Museum of Art. And I isolated it onto a black background as a PNG, and I saved that as a full high resolution TIFF as well, and PNG this time as well. And the reason I saved it as a high resolution, even though I exported it as a low resolution file, was, well, that low resolution file is what I'm going to include inside of GameMaker. The high resolution file is what I want to have as a reference to be able to animate, create layers, and go from there. So, and I'm going to do very, very rudimentary ones as I go. And let's take a look over here. So I load it in, and beautiful. Now this is great. Now, the first thing I've got to ask myself is, remember, I want to put every single animation that I'm working on pretty much on the same file, which means I need to give myself room to work. So is this canvas big enough to work? I'm not actually quite sure about it yet. My guess, my gut instinct is that there's enough room in the negative space to work, but I am going to come over here to canvas size, and I'm going to say that instead of 13.5, I'm going to say it's 16 inches wide and 17 inches tall. All that does is it gives me more white space to work with. I'm going to crop it out later, so it's not the end of the world if I gave myself too much room, because I'm going to keep duplicating the layers as I move. So this is where you're going to watch me think while I'm thinking. So what do I need? I need to basically know. Now, death animation is pretty easy. Death animation, I could have it swirl and fade and shrink, and I could have it, bloody gash. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with a death animation, but that is the least of my worries right now. The really important part of my my animation here is that I want to be able to create a movement animation, something that goes up and down and something that fires. And I don't want to do it in a way that is sort of just not, it's going to work for me. So I'm going to start with the firing animation first, because I think as I'm looking at this, I think I have an interesting idea. So again, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to rename this layer, and I'm going to call this my base layer. And because I'm going to be creating an animated series of frames inside of this, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as my as a Photoshop document. And this way I know that no matter what happens, it's saved with layers and I'm good to go and I don't have to worry about it. This is just my way of being able to hit Control S and feel good about myself. All right, so what am I going to do? All right, so again, I've got my base layer. Let's duplicate it. That's going to keep going over here. And I'm going to actually do some interesting separations. I'm kind of doing this on the fly, so let me zoom in here. And I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the mask so that when he fires, the helmet opens. That's the first thing I'm thinking of. So to do that, I need to come over here, and I'm going to take a moment. I'll probably get a little bit quieter than I've been, though I'm never that quiet, as you know. A little quieter than I've been, to isolate this part of the mask. I'm actually very happy because I'm always thinking I want to do something Monty Python-ish, and I never get the art to do it. Even though I'm the one picking the art myself, I end up never really just giving myself what I need to make that happen. But I think for once, I've actually done it. I think for once I have found something that is going to make me happy. And again, notice I didn't just start with the movement animations. I'm starting with this animation because it makes sense to me. And hopefully when I'm done with this one, it'll not just make sense to me, it'll inspire the other ones. So go with whatever you need to do first along the way, because at the end of the day, I'm not going back to GameMaker until I've resolved all of my animations, because my animations that bring it to life, and they all interconnect, as I'll show you in a little bit. Technically, the death animation doesn't interconnect, but the rest of them actually are going to be dependent on each other. So if you decide that you want to do the up animation, then later change the down animation, they are going to be related. I am looking at the chat window in case anybody's here. Bam. That's not bad. That's not bad. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cut it. And you're like, I don't see anything, because there it is. That's beautiful. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit paste in place. Paste in place is always a very nice thing there. What that allows you to do, it allows you to put it to perfect cut. And of course, this is the visor, and this is the helmet. Excellent. Now, this is an interesting one because normally I'm doing lots of layers here, but first I'm going to come over here and to see if this premise works. I'm going to come over here to Control T. Now, one of the things that normally happens is, let's take a look. I haven't done this in a while where I have rotated to a point and I don't see it here. They keep changing things in Photoshop, so I don't know where the center point is for the rotation for the free transform. Obviously, right now it's in the center, but I'm so used to it being something that you could pivot, and I don't see where that is. I wonder if they've moved that. I'm sure somebody's going to criticize me later for not apparently knowing where it moved to. But I'm going to come over here, and even without it, I'm going to come over here and do this. Now, one of the things you have to ask yourself is when you fire, what sort of pacing you want. And I think a lot of times what you think is you want sort of a slow motion pacing, but really you don't. And I want you to think about this. Imagine this was a gun. If this was a gun, the moment you fired, you want the bullet to come out instantly. Now the rest of the animation, the gun going up and the cloud of smoke, that happens after you fire the bullet. What you don't want to do is hit fire and then something, and then the bullet comes out. Because what happens is that means you're firing in slow motion. So you really want to be thinking about the fact that whatever that first flash of motion is really going to be the first thing that you do. So it's not going to be like open to fire. It's going to be boom, close, because the animation happens afterwards. You almost want to go kapow. So what I would do is I would literally come way open so that it would go, so let me double click that, so that it would be like, so it would be boom, ba, boom, ba. And so, yeah, I know it's a little bit off because the thing's still up in the middle, but that, you get the point. So it would be frame 1, frame 2, and then 3, 4, and you're done. And that's a pretty good firing animation. Now I've got to ask myself, did it open enough? And that's kind of where it's nice to be able to play with these things. I enjoy this too much. So let me come back over here. Let me rotate it even more. And by the way, I should have saved this before I did any of this. I should have made a duplicate of this layer so that I can actually get it right back into the proper place, but I'll be okay when the time comes. I'm not too scared about that. Dun, da, da. All right, that's good. So that's probably a little better. So it's boom, fire, and then of course I'll have the thing come out of here. So that's going to be sort of this one layer. Now remember, I want to do an animation with this, so I'm going to come over here. I'm going to bring my baseline down over here. Remember, we're going to keep having that base that we go over and over again with. And then I am going to duplicate the layers. Yay. And then unlike normally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to layer, new group from layers. I'm not going to merge them together, and I'm going to call this Fire 01. Actually, I'm going to call it Fire 02 because technically Fire 01 is going to be the base layer, and this way I can turn that one off. All right, beautiful. Matter of fact, I should not have. I'm going to delete those layers. I'm just going to duplicate this group because it'll make my life a little easier. Fire 2, and this is going to be called Fire 3. And I'm going to, so the firing is literally going to be 1, 2, that's the second frame, and then the third frame is just going to be a little bit further down. So I'm going to kind of 3, 4. So I'm going to have it go E, E, E. And so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to bring the visor down again, and I'm going to bring it down about halfway. Is that right? So that's 3. That's good. And then I can do that, and then I can duplicate this layer again. I could probably even not do another frame. I could probably get away with just that amount, but I'd rather have it done now than not. So this is Fire 04. Of course, I expect a lot more from you, and I don't need to. Oops. And I don't need to put in the repeated frame because I'm going to take care of that later. When I'm doing all this other stuff. But I'm going to come over here and I'm going to bring it down, but not all the way down. So it has that one more little gap in there. Beautiful. I can bring that over here like that. So there you go. So I now have my four or 5 frames. And of course, I'm not going to show you the 5th frame because it's repeated. So it's going to go base, Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, down to base. Beautiful. We've done a firing animation. I hit save. Yay. That's 1 of 4 animations done. I feel good about that one. So now the question is, what do I do for the motion animations? What do I do? And again, I've got this whole rigid thing going on, right? It really is a rigid item. So let's do the sort of the stationary one first, the just kind of wiggling thing. So I'm going to take my base layer again. I'm always going to start with my base layer, and I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to bring it up here so I know that, I'm going to bring it way up there. So I'm going to take a look up here. So there it is. And then, of course, this is my static layer. And again, I'm starting with that one, and I basically want to wiggle it in two different directions. So I'm going to duplicate it once, and I'm going to call this one static 0, 0. And I'm going to call this one static 1. And when I rotate it, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to rotate it a little bit like that. And that's, how many degrees is that? Let's do 7 degrees. So that's 7 degrees that way. I'm going to duplicate this layer again. So it's going to go to the center point. So it's static 02. And I'm going to duplicate it again. And oops, I could have typed it in there. Static 03. Technically, it's the same layer. And instead of going 7 degrees, I'm going to go negative 7 degrees. Oops. Negative 7 degrees. So it's going to kind of go like this. It's going to go, so it's going to go 1, wiggle, 2, wiggle. And it's going to go 1 wiggle, 2 wiggle, 1 wiggle, 2 wiggle. So that's kind of a good stationary thing. So I feel good. So I've got my second animation done. I've got my, let me come over here and put I'm going to duplicate this one again because I want to put this one, it's called Fire 01. I'll explain why I'm putting all the repeated frames in here to make life easier. So here is my fire animation. And there is my static animation. And there I have my base. All right. So 2 out of 5 ain't bad. Now, what about going up? What about going down? So how can I indicate that it's going up versus it's going down? This is a hard one. I'm going to tell you, this is a legitimately hard one. I'm going to zoom out for a second. I'm stumped. I'm so stumped, I'm tempted to jump to that death animation along the way because it's such a nice rigid item. And again, with the wiggling thing, it can wiggle up and it wiggle down. I may have to do something very, very subtle with it, and I'm not necessarily pleased by that. I mean something by subtle. I mean something that would be more arbitrary than I would normally do, like a blinky thing or an arrowy thing, something that's very artificial in this case, but maybe more organic in your case, because again, the wiggle might be working. So I'm still trying to go with what would be the right way of doing this. Now, let's think about death animations real fast, right? So you've been hit. And all right. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my Fire 4 and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call it Death 02. Now, why Death 02? Because we already have Death 01. Remember, every animation that we have is going to begin with another duplicate of the base layer, just because it's nice, easier. So Death 01. There you go. So if this is Death 01, beautiful. I can hide this one, all these layers. Don't worry about it. Name the layers properly. Use as many as you want. All right, so I'm going to come over here and go to Death 02. But I guess if I die, I don't want it to come up. Right? What do I want to do? I want it to, so I've been hit. Let's see how this looks. I'm just going to play for a second. I'm going to play for a second. Oh, I've got the damn snap on. The damn snap. We love you, snap, except until we don't. So I can come over here. So no, it doesn't snap. One. All right, that's not bad. Duplicate group. And then I'm going to rotate it some more. 2. That's pretty funny. Let's duplicate it again. There we go. Oops. Grabbed everything. Not yet. All That's pretty good. All right, so far our animation is dit, 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 dit. And then now I'll start doing something funny. Now I will just grab the helmet, and I will copy that, and I will paste in place, which basically puts it in the exact same spot. And this time I will, oops, up there, up there, up there. I will call it Death 05, so that there will be no. All right, so that'll be Death 5, but I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. Oops, that was the wrong button to press. Turns out if you hold the Alt key while resizing the latest version of Photoshop, it resizes from the center, which is a nice thing. 1, duplicate layer, Control T, Alt shrink it down, 2, beautiful. Don't worry, we're going to turn it off. Duplicate layer, 7, Control T, hold the Alt key down so it shrinks from the center. Beautiful. And probably should come over here and maybe even give it a bit of a rotation. 1, come this over here even more. 2, and again we can do more and more drastic as we go. This is very, very fast, so you don't have to, like, even though I'm doing it relatively fast here, it goes so quickly when you're doing this in the real world. So I can like even bring it up further, and then if I want to have even more fun, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start to fade it out a little bit. So that's that one. So I want to start really getting away. I know that's Pac-Man, but still, you get my meaning. And rotate some more. Oops, don't rotate it yet. I want to shrink it before I rotate it. Shrink it, and then rotate it, and then bring some opacity down, and then do it one more time. Duplicate layer. Oops, that would be Death 10. Again, shrink it down, rotate it, bring the opacity down, and then of course I'm just going to come over here and do new layer, and I'm going to call it Death 11. It's blank, which is fine because I want it to be blank. So it's sort of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there you go. That's your death animation. So we have death animation. All right. So we are 3 of 5. All right. Let's keep going. I'm going to duplicate the layer, and I'm going to bring it all the way to the top. And now I've got to figure out what am I going to do about my up and my down animation. So this is going to be my up. Ooh, up. 01. So I'm moving up. See, I'm looking at my chat window to see if there's any brilliant ideas. So the up is actually an easy one for me because I know exactly what I want to do for up. Is I want to make it like a rocket ship, where there's sort of like a little oscillating things, but there's like little firing things there. The problem is I can't do that for the bottom. I can't add that in, because if I do that, then it'll mess with the way that this is working up top here for me. And then of course I've got to ask the question: is do I want to do something that would be kind of wiggly along the way? If I'm going to be wiggly along the way, then what I want to do is I want to use my static ones as sort of my baseline as well. But here's the good news. We wrote down the numbers. It was 7 degrees. Remember, it was -7 and +7. That's why I sort of keep things in my head. Normally, I'll have like a boogie board, and I'll start writing everything down the boogie board. Where are my boogie boards? I'm like, if you're going to code, you should be surrounded by boogie boards, by the way. It makes your life a lot easier. Oh, we're doing good here. All right, so what should I do for going up? Ooh, ooh. I think I have it. See, this is why you do what you do. Um, yes, yes. So he's going to wiggle in place. Let me get rid of that frame I just made. That up 01. Screw up 01. I'm going to come back over here to my Fire 04. Yes, my Fire 04 layer. I'm going to call up 01. And I'm going to bring it to the top. And I think this is going to be how we do it. So I think it's nice and easy. So there we go. Look, that's up. That's going to be our up. It's going to be, I think this is going to be subtle, but I think it's going to work. All right, so I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to call this up 0. Technically, this is going to be up 01. I'll make the other one up 02. All right, so up 01. And then we'll make this one up 02. And it'll be sort of a Pac-Man-y thing, where it'll be like up. So it'll be flashing up. It'll be up. And then what we'll do is, so the white space will be here for the up ones, and then I will come over here and I will duplicate these layers. And I will call this one down 01, which we know is right. And I will call this one down 02, which you haven't seen me do yet. And then I can come over here to this one, and I can grab the visitor mask, the visor. I say visitor. It's how blind I am, folks. I thought the visitor. And I can come over here and I can bring it down this way. And now it'll be, down versus up. It'll be kind of funny because when you fire, it'll go and open, close, and then I kind of feel good about that. Yeah, I feel good about that. Good. So what do I have? I have all my animations done. So my down animation are these two frames. My up animation are these two frames. My death animation is 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then my static is 3, 2, 1, 0. I could have done better than that one. My firing animation is 4, 3, 2, 1. And then, of course, there's my base animation. So this is it. This is everything. Now I feel good about this, and I'm going to save this. This is my layered version, but now I'm going to save it as I'm very. Oh, I got to wait for it to finish saving. I'm very much a belt and suspenders kind of guy when it comes to these types of files. Where now that I have this master file with all these layers, I'm going to save it a little bit differently. I'm going to call this save as, and I'm going to save this one as hero animations, which is fine. It's nice and saved. That one, that's my duplicate. And I'm going to save it again as, I should have done that already. File, save as, hero, animations, flat. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm using groups and I don't want to have the groups involved. I'm going to actually flatten all my groups first before I go on. So that means I'm going to come over here to this one. And for each group, I'm just going to hit Control E, which is going to turn those groups into flattened layers. It makes my life a little bit easier. Control E is great. If you're wondering what Control E, it's layer merge down. And basically when you merge down a group, it just turns it into what you see is what you get layer wise. It's a nice little trick there. So now I have all these different layers. Hallelujah. But wait, there's more. I did this at high resolution, so I'd have the high resolution files, and that's great. And you should have done that as well. You should work on high resolution files. What I've discovered is that one of the things that people forget is I don't want GameMaker to do my file resizing or my file scaling. It's a lot easier if I do this ahead of time, mostly because I don't want it to be done on the fly. I definitely don't want it to be done dynamically by GameMaker. I want it to be done myself. I want to be in control over it. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to open my game folder. And I had made earlier this one here called, where's my big file? There's one Photoshop file called Rail Shooter. And if I open it, what you're going to see is this is the Uber version of my file, which is great. The question is going back to this, and I'm not even sure if this is the right scale or not. What scale is this to this? It's a fair question, right? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my one layer, in this case, the base layer, and I'm going to hit Edit Copy, which copies everything on that layer. I'm going to go back into my Rail Shooter and hit Paste. And there is this enormous one, right? And this is I'm going to rename the layer Scale Test. And I'm going to zoom out. My goodness. And I'm going to scale it down. Now, this is where it's useful to be able to not leave things. I can hit Control plus and Control minus to be able to zoom in and out of Photoshop, which is great. And I can come over here and I can go, that's still too big. So this is what I had done last time, was the bigger than this, but I kind of like this one a little better. And if we look at the top of the screen, we're literally looking at 3.18%. I'm going to come over here and make it 3.3%. All right. How do I feel about that? And the answer is, according to this, boom. No. How do I feel about this? And the answer is probably a little bit better. Now, I have to be very careful. I want to make sure that my bullet isn't actually bigger than my head. So I have to look at this again, because if my bullet's bigger than your head, then if you keep firing, no matter what, nobody can stop you. And of course, when he rotates, probably 3.3 was a little bit small. So I'm going to hit undo. My God, it's giant. But I know what I can come over here and I can say maybe 3.5% is the what I want. Don't worry. It's around here somewhere. Put them back in there. Yeah, that seems a little bit more better of a relationship. It's still enough clearance there. A little bit smaller than it was. There we go. So we know, where's my boogie board? We know that 3.5% is what I want these files to be resized at. Keep that in mind, 3.5%. There's be a quiz later. So I'm going to go back to my hero animation file. And before I go on from this, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to go, there's a lot more white space than I need. Now that I have totally animated everything, I know the limit of all of my sprites put together. That's the magic, by the way. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to crop. Now, does it have to be perfect? No. In other words, I can leave a little bit of white space if I wanted to. This is actually what's called a trim. Technically, I could have Photoshop do it for me. I'm not. I'm just going to come over here and do it myself. I'm going to eyeball it as long as I know that I've got there. And I can, oops, I can even come down here. And there you go. I have cropped the file. Now I am going to, and before I do this, I'm going to save it again, because this is a file that's going to be destructive. File, save as, and instead of just flat, it's going to be flattened to scale. Or final, as it were. Beautiful. And now I'm going to go to image size, and this is where I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to resize everything to 3.5%. And I do not want to be nearest neighbor. Oh my God, that's back from a demo I did a while ago. I got to leave that set to automatic. Click on OK, and it's going to resize the entire bloody thing. While it's doing that, I'm going to make myself a folder called Hero Animations. Now, I don't have any hero animations yet. I can, by the way, confidently hit save because I've made everything else. Yes, it looks low res because it is low res. It's the appropriate resolution. That's why we do this in the order that we do it. And now I want to save all of these layers. Now, if I go to save all these layers automatically, in here, weird things happen with the white space. Instead, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do File, Export, and I'm going to say Export Layers to Files. Now, before I do this, I want to double check certain things. Number one, are all of my files, are my layers named properly? Yes. Are all my layers visible? Yes. Now, there again, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm being a good soldier when I do this. File, Export, Layers to Files. Now that I've done this, where do I want to save it? Well, I made a little folder. I can browse to it. I'm going to save it in that folder. Excellent. I'm going to call it, now I'm going to rename it. It's called Hero Dash. I don't need the prefix in there. I'm not going to do visible layers only. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to save it as a PNG file, 8-bit PNG versus 24-bit PNG. I'm going to do 24-bit PNG. That's the full color PNG that we're used to. And I do want to keep the transparency, but I do not want to further trim the layers. The reason I don't want to further trim the layers is I want everything to line up, and that's what confuses the crap out of people. If I start trimming the layers and every image is going to be a different size, and when I go to line things up differently, it's going to be very, very difficult. That's why we did everything in the exact same spot. All the animations line up. Now that we've cropped it so that it's loose, everything's going to line up, and we're not going to trim the layers, and we are going to keep our 24-bit transparency. And the moment I hit run, it does the stupidest thing you've ever seen Photoshop do. It's going to open and close and open and close and open and close the file. And if you want to know what that looks like, if I go into Hero Animation, you're going to start seeing the files just magically appear. Let's go ahead and view the large icons. And so, and again, this, you think about how long a human would take to do this, right? I would go file, save, file, save. What it's literally doing is it's closing the file, hiding all the layers one at a time, saving, exporting the layer, closing the file. It's insane how bad this script is in terms of inefficiency, but it works. So I'm going to let it run its thing. I did this once. I had to do this with 1,500. I had a 1,500 layer Photoshop file. Don't ask me why I had a 1,500 layer Photoshop file. And when I did that, it was a real disaster in terms of trying to sort of put everything together. But I did, and I actually found another script out there that you can use that actually does a much more robust job. But this is built into Photoshop, so we'll let it do its thing. And again, think about this. This is a very limited animation. The good news is you can actually see that it's doing it all. What's weird is it's going from the top down. So I should have done it backwards. So it's going 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. And then, of course, if you look at the names and the numbers, we actually animated it this way. So this is bottom up. This is top down. In my mind, I start with the bottom layer and work my way up. But in Photoshop's mind, I'm starting at the top layer and work myself down. So there is my flickering down animation. There's my flickering up animation. It's still animating my, there's my complete death animation. There is my static, which is going to be 4 files. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's my static animation. And then we have the firing, which of course is going to be 4 or 5 ones. Fire 4, 3, 2. That's a good one. I actually like that one. 2. I'm actually glad I thought of all this. 1. Pat myself on the back. Here we go. This isn't me vamping, by the way, because, you know, oh, it's done. It was successful. Hallelujah. And I hit save. All right, so I have all my animations, 5 animations. I'm not doing an enemy death animation right now because I'm just not there yet, and we'll stop from here. And thus endeth the Photoshop. So for those of you who are watching, remember, we edit, we do our animations on the big file, we do everything on the high resolution file, and the last we do is we go back into our rail shooter, which is sort of our game reference file, before we bring it all in and do it this way. Does that make sense? Of course it makes sense. I just did it like right in front of you and I explained it over and over again. All right, I feel good about this. I'm going to save this file so I have it for reference. That's our scale test, so we know what it is. I'm going to come over here, and though I've already flattened this, I'm going to save this one. I'm going to get out of here, and now we go back to GameMaker. Yay! Remember GameMaker? This is a GameMaker tutorial, and remarkably, like last time, I'm around 30 or 40 minutes in. So I did 45 minutes of everything but GameMaker, and then about half an hour in GameMaker. Let's see what this turns into tonight. All right. So let's come back over here to my sprites, because that's what we got to mess with. So my hero sprite just looked like this. This is my generic hero sprite. We're actually going to leave him alone for a second because we're no longer going to use him, but we're going to leave him there for sort of posterity purposes. Create a new sprite. And we're going to create a sprite hero idle. Ooh, there you go. That's right. Import. Now, what are the frames for the hero idle? Say import. Come on, open. There we go. Open. Let's come over here to hero animations and our hero idle. I called hero static. 1, 2, 3, 4. There he is. Now, let's take a quick look. Let's hit play. That cute? He wiggles. Now, we have some things we've got to ask ourselves. Does he wiggle too fast or too slow? Now, I can change the frames per second here, which is nice because when I change the animation speed here, I am changing the nature of the animation speed for the sprite in its thing. So if I want it to be like this slow, if this is the appropriate speed, actually, I think, yeah, if this is the appropriate speed, then when I bring in the speed in 100%, this is how it will animate. Lovely. 1, 2, and again. Stop the animation. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that's actually tells me that the orders are in wrong. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So this is telling me that it's on backwards. So I really want it to start with this frame, which is the regular frame. So it's this frame and this frame are the same. And this is 1 down, 1 up. And that may not seem like a big difference, but it is. Or I can go 1 up, 1 down. It should be the same thing. As long as this one and this one are the same, so that when it gets here, it comes back to here. So 1 back, 1 forward. 1 back, 1 forward. 1 back, 1 forward. Play it at 5 frames per second. There you go. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Now, one other thing I need to do is on the main base frame, I need to figure out where my center point is. I'm going to put my center point right about here. Now, the center point is a reference point from everything else is based. It's also where the bullet's going to come from. So I think right around here is going to be a good compromise. That's 5271. To make it a little bit easier, I'm going to see 5272 looks good, and it does. Oops, no. 5272. Remember 5272, we're going to need it later. At this point, I would normally go through and build my collision mask. I would say that's too big of a collision mask. I need a precise collision mask. Precise collision mask shows you, notice by the way, it's showing you all 4 frames at once. If I do precise for a frame, then literally, I could get embedded into the wall at some point because it's going to be a different collision mask for every frame, and there could be animating into something. Instead of doing precise per frame, I'm going to do precise slow, which does all the frames at the same time. The problem is that because we don't know which animation we're going to be using, it may actually mix animations up, and we're going to get there. So the reality of it is I don't need to do any of this right now. Normally I would, but I'm going to do a trick in a second that means I don't have to do any of the collision mask on my individual hero sprites. And I will, again, demonstrate why in a second. So normally you would do this, but we're not going to do that because of a specific situation we're running into. So I'm going to create another sprite called sprite, that's hero idle. Let's create hero up. And I'm going to import my hero up. Hero up, 1, 2. Now, which one of these, this is the up one, so I want to make sure the base one is the one we start with. Play. A little too fast. That feels good. Now, I want to make sure that I have the same alignment point, which, of course, we remember is 5272, which is why I keep my boogie board going. Very good. Everyone got that? Of course you do. Another one. Again, notice I didn't do any of my collision masks. This is going to be sprite hero down. Import. Let's go this way instead and see if it's better. Okay, closed, open. Oh, nope, still. That's open, closed. Bring this over here. We said 8 frames per second. Should be the same. 5272 should be the same. And that's the down animation. All right, I can live with that. So we've done that one. What's the other animations? Create sprite. Sprite, hero, fire. Import. Where's my fire animation? 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, I'm probably going to have to reverse them. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So, okay, obviously way too fast. All right. All right. Fire. Notice, by the way, it's not animating anymore. So I was doing as I was changing it from, you can have it loop, ping pong, or not loop at all. So fire, 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 fire. Let me loop it again. Fire, 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 fire. Yeah, that's pretty good. Normally I'd have an end animation on this one, but I don't need to because it's going to loop onto that first one. So I feel good about that. Oh, wait, 5272. Make sure you align your origin points or not. Ooh. No, what did I do? Well, we'll fix that in a minute. All right, and then lastly, I have my death animation. Create sprite, hero, death. hero death. And we go from, I don't want to have to do this backwards, but I'm going to have to, wonder if I can do it backwards with a control key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did that open backwards? No, it opened it backwards. Now, I think there is a way to do this. You know what? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit edit image. And I'm going to see if I can do this with the tools that are in front of me. Does one of the tools allow me to reverse frames? There it is, right there. You know, it's kind of cheap. I could have just done it by hand, but why bother? It's right there. So I've edited it, and I can come back over here to, how do I close that? I guess I just going to come over here and open the sprite again. There we go. And I'm going to hit play. Oh, that's way too fast. That's a little slower than I want. I have to do sound effects now so I can think about it later. All right, I'm going to say 52 by 72, so everything's lined up. Now, of course, I hate when I do that. 52 by 72, so everything lines up. Now, of course, as you know, there is no collision mask on the death animation because it's already dead. It's just really an animation. It's actually not going to line up to anything. So take a deep breath and listen to me for a moment. One of the problems that we're going to have is that our hero, while active, while alive, could have the collision mask of up, down, fire, or idle. That's 4 different collision masks. Now, while each sprite has its own collision mask, they actually need it to respect all the collision masks at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my sprite hero, which we've already disregarded, and I'm going to call this one sprite hero mask. This is our sprite hero collision mask. And I am going to come over here and I'm going to import every frame except for the death animations, because the death animations don't count. The death animations don't count because the death animation actually is played on a completely different object, and if the death animation hit the wall, it wouldn't actually be affected by the wall. By loading all the frames at the same time except for the death animation, I've created this monstrosity, 72 by 72, same spots. But now, if I come over here to the collision mask, I'm going to say I want it to be precise slow, and what you're going to see is a collision mask that is the entirety of every single frame in all of those sprites. And we're going to use that later on as our global collision mask. Now, this works because we haven't gone crazy. If all of a sudden I had my da-da-da-da-da, but one of the frames was like boo, then that wouldn't work because that means that the boo collision mask was always there. It's a dangerous thing to do anyway because it really is unfair to everything. But this being the collision mask is fairly good for what it is that we're trying to do. So far, so good? Excellent. What have we done so far? Nothing. We've created graphics and we've loaded them. Now, I'm definitely going to go over to my object hero and I'm going to swap out my graphic, which of course was now going to be the sprite hero idle. But if you come over here where it says collision mask same as sprite, I'm going to say that the collision mask is my sprite hero mask. And that means no matter what happens, no matter which sprite I sort of dress this object on, it is always going to use the collision mask of sprite hero mask. And this is new for this year. If you've actually watched me do this demo in the past, this is not what we've done it before, but this gives me a little bit more clarity. Now I'm going to go back into my room as well and basically see if this affected where my object was. And it hasn't, by the way. It makes sense. The object is about the same spot. Because I moved the center point and I rescaled the object, it could have appeared here or here, but it's good. And now if I hit play, the only thing that's going to have happened is that you're going to see that the object is going to be on the idle animation and it's going to have a little bit more breathing room around it from a collision mask perspective. So there it is. It moves up and down. So you can see that it's kind of close. So it doesn't look anything bad. It idles up and down. And if I hit fire, it fires and we're all good to go. Deep breath time. Was that good? That was good. I like that one. All right. So how do I make the up and the down animations? The up and the down animations, pretty straightforward. Let's do this together. So when let's come over back to my hero. When I press hero key up, in addition to going up, I would like to change the sprite I'm using. Now I can do that by going over to sprite. Oh, look, there it is. Set sprite. And I'm going to say that I want the sprite when I'm moving up to be the up sprite. And I want the sprite when I'm moving down to be the down sprite. How easy was that? Let's hit play and see what happens. And it's not going to work. So when I go up, nothing happens. Oh, there it is animating. When I go down, nothing happens. And there it is animating. So what's the problem? Why is it not working when I'm doing it? Well, that's because I told it every time I'm pressing the down button to start to change out the sprite that sprite, which means it's starting the animation over and over and over. So until I let go, it's basically stuck on frame 0. It always starts 0, 1, 2. When I let go, it plays just fine. When I let go, it plays just fine. When I let go, it plays just fine. That's the down animation. That's the up animation. That's the down animation. That's the up animation. But when I'm holding the key down, it's locked into place because it's basically saying, put on sprite 0, sprite frame 0, sprite frame 0. Very easy to fix. There's this thing here called relative. And relative means whatever the current number is relative to it. Well, one of our variables, and we talked about this idea about instance variables, like things like speed and direction. One of our instance variables is which frame of the sprite am I playing. So if I say relative, then I say whatever frame you're on, stay on that. So instead of going 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, it's going to go, because it's obviously with a loop, it's going to go 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. And when it does that over and over again, it's going to make sure that no matter what happens, if I'm in the same one, it's just going to keep playing without any problem. And if I do this, then when I press up, it's going to animate all the way up. And when I press down, it's going to animate all the way down. See, up, 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 down, 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 up, 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 down, 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 up, up, up. It's very subtle, by the way. Up, 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 down, 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 up, 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 down, 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 up, 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 down, down, down. But no idle animation. Well, why isn't it? We didn't tell it's idle. It started with the idle animation, but we have to tell it's idle. Well, when does it idle? And this becomes a really important part. When are you looking for it? Well, I want it to idle when the speed is 0. Right? When do I check to see if the speed is 0? All the time. You have to check all the time if the speed is 0. In that case, that would be in what's called a step event. Step events are always running. Now, yes, they are really sloppy to do. They're really power hungry or they're resource hungry, but you're going to be fine. So I'm going to come over here and I'm at a new event. Add event. Add a step event and say basically at all times, if speed is 0, throw in the idle event. So we're going to do our big if command, if variable. Which variable are we going to do? Speed, right? Because speed is a variable. It's always there. It is a constant. So if I'm going to say if speed is equal to 0, then what? Well, then I want, and again, when you do an if command, by the way, the then is on the right side. So I drag it to the right side. And I said, if speed is equal to 0, then I want to make my sprite to be sprite hero idle and also relative so that it doesn't just, keep starting over and over again. So now it's going to work. So it's idling, up, 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 idling, up, 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 idling, down, 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 idling. It's kind of funny. Like, hi, how you doing? Hi, how you doing? Hi, how you doing? Now, what's really important here is that if I hadn't used a common collision mask, when the moment I started to idle, I could have actually found myself embedded into the wall because I could have hit the wall, frozen in the one collision mask, but then when I swapped to the other sprite, it could have, got embedded into the other collision mask. And we were really trying to avoid that. So by putting all the collision masks in one basket, as it were, no matter what happens, this can't happen. So when I'm idling, when I'm up, when I'm idling, when I'm down, when I'm idling, 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 idling. There you go. Congratulations. We have managed to put in three of the 5 animations. Remember, we're only going to do 4 of the animations today, any at all times. So now we have to come back and go, how do we do the firing animation? Because the firing animation is going to be a disaster. Are you ready for the disaster? All right. Take a deep breath. You can do this. I believe in you. I can do it. I believe in me. Fire, fire, fire. All right. When I come over here, when I fire, I'm going to come over to my space. And when this happens, I'm going to say, hey, you fired the bullet. You should change the sprite to which sprite? It should be the sprite fire. Now, do I want it to always jump in the middle? No. So I'm going to leave this set to 0. And we'll see what happens. And you'll see exactly what the problem is. Doesn't do anything. I move up, it doesn't do anything. I move down, it doesn't do anything. The reason is because all the parameters override this one. What is the parameter? Well, if I press the space bar, it starts the animation. But immediately it knows if you're going up to do the up animation, the down animation, and the idle animation. So regardless of the fact that I told to fire, it's irrelevant because it's trying to go back to the other animations. So we need to tell the other animations to not trigger if I'm in the middle of a firing sequence. What does a firing sequence mean? A firing sequence means that you have played through the complete firing animation. Now, there's no way of knowing, there's no really good way of testing which sprite I've just put on and whether or not I finished it or not. That's way too much. I mean, there's ways, but there's way too much. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to start with something, our first custom state variable. And a state variable is going to be a variable that we make that basically tells us the status of something that's going on. Just like speed is 0 because that's a state that the system knows, or X or Y, which is a state the system knows, or visible, we're going to create a new state, a state that means something to us that the system can talk about. So what we're going to do is we're going to initialize it. We're going to create, and we're going to add a new variable. And the variable in this case is going to be called variable am I firing. Now the good news is whenever you create a variable here, it's going to be in the variable list. So as long as you're not an idiot, you'll be fine. Now, am I firing? No. So I set it to 0. So we set it to 0, and now at some point I have to set it to 1, and then I have to set it back to 0 again. So it's always 0. Am I firing? No. Well, when am I firing? Well, I'm firing when I come over here. When am I firing? I'm firing right here when I press the space bar, when I create the instance. So I'm going to say variable underscore, and it's going to show me, oh, look, am I firing? I don't even have to type it in. Variable am I firing? And I'm going to say it's equal to 1. Hello, by the way, I can see you there. So am I firing is equal to 1. So now I've set firing equal to 1. Now, I have to do two things. Number one is I have to use that power. Now that I know I've hit fire, I've got to use this to my advantage. And then the other is I have to come back and say, I'm no longer firing. So when am I no longer firing? Let's start with that one. Let's actually turn the variable on and turn the variable off. So the variable was 0. We started off, it is not firing. Now we hit the space bar. Bam, we are firing. The variable is 1. So now we have to set it back to 0 again. And the answer is, well, when do we want to do that? We want to do that when the animation is over. Well, which animation is over? Well, the firing animation. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to use something called animation end. And I'm going to say if. Now, I have to do an if statement first because I need to know whether I'm firing. I only want to set firing to 0, as in the animation is over, if it's the firing animation in the first place, which we know because am I firing is equal to 1. So if am I firing is equal to 1, which means that this is the end of the firing animation, then I want to set the variable am I firing back to 0. Does that make sense? So it starts off as 0. Am I firing is equal to 0 because I'm not firing. And I'm sitting around not firing, and the moment I hit the space bar, I fire. And the moment I hit the space bar and I fire, it loads the firing animation. We'll deal with the ramifications of that in a second. And when the moment the firing animation is over, it's going to set the firing, the am I firing variable back to 0. So we've got this thing. It's 0, it's 1 when I press the space bar, and it's 0 again when that animation ends. But you could double click, you can double tap, and that would be a bad thing here. So basically what I want to say is, yes, if I press the space bar, am I firing is equal to 1, blah, blah, blah. But I want to put in an if statement here. Basically what I say is, you know what? You're only allowed to fire if what? If am I firing is equal to 0. I only want to be able to fire if I'm not in the middle of a firing animation. Now, we're going to be putting other restrictions in a little bit when we kind of limit our firing. But basically what this says is, and by the way, this is not in the right spot. I have to put it all over here. I go, if am I firing, I gotta drag all this stuff into the right spot. But basically what it says here is that you can only fire if you're not in the middle of firing. And that's a pretty good number here. So now that's the next step. Now, this is where we start putting in the more if statements. The if statements are going to be very, very favorable for us. So let's do it let's put in all 3 if statements. All right. So there's my set sprite. You know what? I only want to set that sprite. I only want to play the hero up sprite when, if what? If am I firing is equal to 0. Or we could say is not equal to 1. It's the same thing. In other words, if I'm allowed to change sprites, then I will. Do it again. If, come back over here, if am I firing is equal to 0. In other words, if I'm not firing, then by all means change the sprite. And the same thing goes with the step event. Now we've got this if speed, and I got to put another if statement on it. It's going to be if. Put it up here. If what? If variable am I firing is equal to 0. In other words, if I'm not firing and if the speed is 0. So if, go. I'll go over it again after it works. Because it's going to work. So fire. So the firing works. And you'll notice, by the way, I can't fire too quickly. It was a lot slower now because basically I can't fire until that animation is back down again. And notice, by the way, it automatically comes back over here. And this allows me to fire when I'm moving up. And it allows me to fire when I'm moving down. Fire. Excuse me. Fire. Excellent. Does that make sense? So let's go over the state variable one more time, because it's not enough that you actually do it. It's enough that you actually understand what it is that you're doing. We basically went through and said as follows. We have this variable called am I firing, which is basically set to 0 because I'm not firing. 0 means no. And we say, hey, what? When you press the up key, if you're not firing, go ahead and swap out the animation. Because if you are firing, what are you doing? Well, you're playing a different animation, so we're okay with that. When I press the down key, if I'm not firing, go ahead and change the animation. So this prevents the movement, or not the movement, but the pressing of the up and down arrows to override the firing animation. Those are taken care of. Let's look at the step event. If I'm not firing and I'm stationary, then I can swap the animation again as well. So basically what we've done is we've said, yes, you've got this automatic default, pick the right animation, either because you're pressing the right buttons or because you're not moving, but only do it if the state variable, this am I firing, is set to 0. Now we know that this is protected. Now we have to swap them back and forth, and it's very easy. When I press the space bar, first, by the way, it says, you know what? If I'm in the middle of firing, still, you can only fire if I'm not firing. So if I'm not firing, then by all means, set the state variable to 1, do your thing. And then this, because I'm now using the firing animation, now I can go to animation end and say, as soon as because we know it's set to 1, because I'm in am I firing, as soon as the am I firing animation, or in this case, the hero fire animation is over, then I can set the am I firing to 0. And now what comes back into play? All those default animations, the up animation, the down animation, and the firing animation. So far, so good? Excellent. I'm very happy with this. So it's a little bit different than we've done before. Now, it's not the end of the world. The state variable, we're going to be doing more and more state variables. And again, when we get to Pac-Man, we're going to be doing a lot of state variables. I could have done true, false. There's actually more than one way to skin a cat. I could have done a lot more things in here, but this is what we've done today. All right, so what do we got? Again, let's take a look. Boom, fire, 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 fire. And I'm actually happy with the thing comes out of, the what is it? This blade comes out of. But let's give it some life. So let's come over here to Object Hero Bullet. And when we create it, let's throw in something fun. Let's throw in some instance rotation. And I'm going to say that I want to rotate at -5 degrees relative. Now, if I say this -5 degrees, it's going to go -5 degrees and stop that way. But relative, that means every step, it's going to rotate 5 degrees, and it's going to have some fun tumble there. I think -5 is the correct direction that I want to be going. We'll see. Oop, that did not work. Wait, where did I put that in? It's in the hero bullet. Negative. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Let's do 1 degree. So maybe I did something else wrong. Oh, I think I may know what I did wrong. We'll see. Let's come back over to my hero bullet itself. Let's take a look at it. Well, I have put it in the center. That's pretty good. Is the collision mask set? It's slow. That's really good. Okay, so that's all good. So why is my hero bullet not animating when I do it? I set the speed, set instance rotation to 1. Maybe I should make it bigger. See what happens. I'll make it 10. Be silly. By the way, I'm still looking in the chat window, so if there's anybody who wants to say hi, I can see you. Oh, it's frozen there. You can see that the angle is there. Let's make it 30. I'm going to uncheck relative, and then I'm going to check it again, see if it's like a bug. Well, there's my 30-degree angle. That's good. But relative should be what I want it to be. Duh. Silly. I said it to be, I only rotated at the beginning. I don't want to put this here. I don't want to rotate it at the, I don't want to rotate it at the create event. I want to rotate it at the step event. I want it to be rotating constantly. Duh. Sorry about that. See, I make stupid mistakes, and I figure them out, and I don't feel bad about myself. So I'm going to come over here and say 10 degrees relative. And now every step it's going to rotate. There you go. Somebody was watching this and they knew that. They're like, yay. Oh, yeah, look at that. I don't like the whole underhanded counterclockwise thing. So I'm going to come over here and make it -10. So it's going to be that overhanded throw. And do I want it to be faster maybe? Let's go for 15 degrees. A little bit of practice here. Oh, yeah. I feel good about that. Yay. All right. Now, before we continue with this little experiment that we're doing as we're building this game, we run into a problem. And that while the game doesn't crash, it does run up against a wall. And there's a difference between crashing and a wall. But I'm saying by the wall is that I'm stuck now. I can't do anything. I can fire, but I can't do anything. So what I want to do is I want to make the game, even though it's not really much of a game yet, I want to make the game restart every time now, every time I clear the board. When do I check? First of all, at what point is the board cleared? Well, the board is cleared when there are no more enemies. Yay. When do I check for that? Now, technically, I could check always, but it's kind of silly to check always because always isn't when it happens. The only time that the board can possibly be cleared is when an enemy is destroyed. And then you want to go, was that the last enemy? And where does that happen? That happens in the hero bullet. When the hero bullet hits the enemy, this is when I want to say, was that the last enemy? And there's actually a command for that, and it's called a count command. And I could come over here and I could get instance count. Now I'm going to do it after I delete the enemy, but before I delete myself. And what am I counting? I'm counting how many enemies there are. And I'm going to call it variable underscore how many enemies. Call it whatever you want. So after I've destroyed the enemy, I'm going to say, tell me how many enemies do I have? And then what do I say? I say if what? If how many enemies is equal to 0, then what do I want to do? Well, there's really fun. There's two things that I can do. I can go to the room commands and I can restart the room. Restarting the room is good. Or I can restart the entire room, or I can restart the entire game. Now, I'm going to restart the game, and I'll explain to you why. We're going to be dealing with random number generators, and whenever you restart the game inside of the development engine, the random number generator resets as well, so it's going to look the same every single time. This is very useful so that you know if there's any big problems. If I restart the room, it actually would be continuing the game, and then the random number generator would be more random. Now, you're thinking, why don't I want my random number generator to be random? Bear with me. If you are first starting out, if the random number generator always were to go 1, 5, 12, 24, 1, 5, 12, 24, 1, 5, 12, 24, then you'd be able to test things a little bit clearer because you know what the random numbers are going to look like. Now, later on, we can say, no, I don't want you to be that. And when the game is finally rendered, when the game is finally exported, it's the random number generator is truly random. But for now, they give you a sort of a locked into place random number generator so you can predictably see what's going on around you. And even though I know what's going to happen next, I want to predictably see what's going on around me. So what I'm saying is, if how many enemies is 0, then I would like to restart the game. Otherwise, by the way, this is not the else, but this is the regardless is going to destroy the instance. Else's, we'll get to else's later. Let's hit play. Run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yay! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice I jumped into place because it was just like, whoof, restart everything. But now I am not stuck, which is very useful. Now, we haven't done anything with random numbers yet, so you won't know it's a random number generator, but there you go. All right, so I can hit save. I feel good about myself. Take a deep breath. Yay. I'm going to do a quick time check, and all right. Yes, let's keep going. We're doing fine here. I only have a couple more things to do for this round, and then you'll have done your homework, and you can go back and start waiting for the next episode. So what comes next? Well, what comes next is I want to start moving the enemies. Well, I can do that very easily. Come over to the enemy and say, when you are created, what you should do is you should start to move. Right? Remember move? Where's move? Move is around here somewhere. There it is. There is movement. There it is, movement. I'm going to move. I'm going to set my speed to be 10. And I'm going to be in the vertical, right? Remember that? Vertical, up, down versus right, left. So I hit play, run, and we're going to watch. Goodbye. They ran away. They're still, by the way, they're still going, by the way. They still keep going down there. So what do we want to do? Well, very simply this. We want to add an event. Now, remember last time we added an event, and the event was we collided with what? We collide with the wall. Well, what do you want it to do when it collides with the wall? Well, let's come over here back to our movement ones, and we're going to see that there's one specifically for it, and it is called reverse. When I hit the wall, I'd like to reverse the direction. Now, I can reverse it by direction, or I can literally say reverse it vertically. I'm being more precise since I'm already moving vertically. I'm going to reverse it vertically, and all of a sudden you get this. Yay! Bouncy, 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 bouncy. Now it's game. All right, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what's the first thing that you notice when I'm doing this? You know what you notice is that the enemies are way too big. Look how big they are. It's just way too much of a moving target. So, all right. So I'm going to have to make the enemies smaller, but that will not be for today because obviously the next time we meet, I'm going to be animating the enemies and I'll end up beginning to rescale everything accordingly. The other is very predictable. They're moving the exact same speed, and that's kind of boring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the speed from 10 to random 10. Now, when I do this, that will make the speed a random number between 0 and 10. But you've got to be careful. First of all, it's a real number. It's not an integer. And it's also literally going to be, look how slow that one is. Remember, the third one is slow. All right. And there it is. The third one is slow again. And the third one will always be slow. So we've got this event right here. So the third one is slow, and you can see how much better flavor there is. Now, the dangerous part is that if I would actually if I were to keep doing this, the random number generator could literally go all the way down to 0. And if it goes all the way down to 0, then you're screwed because it'll be like creeping along. So you could do something where you want to have like a minimum and a maximum. Matter of fact, there's two ways of doing this. The first one is I could say 5 plus random 10, which would be 5 to 15. Or there's a random feature, random. And if you see random range, then I can literally do in the parentheses 5, 12, which says give me a random number between 5 and 12. Now, again, when you use traditional random numbers, they are not integers. They are real numbers with decimal points, which makes these interesting. So none of them are moving too slow. I take every time I miss something personally. So I keep missing, which is bad. It means it's a little bit more alive. I feel good about that. So far, so good. So again, random range. Now, I like this idea that when I start, I move a random range. But what I could do if I want to make it interesting is I could actually copy this code. And I say, you know what? Every time you hit the wall, not only should you reverse, but you know what? Randomize your speed again. Now, if you're like, well, wait a second, what if they keep hitting the wall? And they will, by the way. It's kind of neat. You'll see in a second that actually, when they hit the wall, they're going to randomly change speeds. But some of them might pause because they keep bumping into the wall. Uh-oh. That was bad. That was bad. Because I just hit the wall. So you know what I should do? I should probably do that instead. Change the speed and then change the direction. See if that works better. Sometimes it's the little things. Oh, now they're hitting the wall again. Ooh, that's bad. Oh, I know why. Because I told it to go vertical. I should be telling it whatever direction you're going. Yes, whatever direction you're going, go change the speed. All right, so this should help a little bit. Let's see if this works. See, that's why we beta. Even when I'm doing these in class or when I'm doing these after class, I still make mistakes. What's nice is that when things hit the wall, they really do change speeds, and there's a little bit more randomness here. It really does feel kind of good here. Notice, by the way, every so often it may even pause at the wall because it's kind of bumping into it. Now, I don't think it'll pause at the wall anymore, because I think every time it changes direction and then it changes speed. Yeah, it changes direction and then it changes speed. And then, of course, I can start deleting things. 1, 2, 3. Oops, missed. 4, 5. Way too big, way too easy. Becomes a problem. Now, there's a million and one things you can do at this point, which is kind of funny. The one problem that we do run into is that when I do hit play for the very first time, do hit run for the very first time, they all go in the same direction. They all go down, and then of course they kind of speed up and go off the way. Let's say I don't like that. Let's say I want to do something a little bit more, not like that. Well, I could put in another if statement. When I create this, I've said that my speed, by the way, is equal to random range of 5 to 12. And of course, that means I'm always going positive, which means that they're always going down. But let's say for a moment, I want half of them to go up. I want a 50-50 possibility that they're going to go up. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to start off by going to a new variable. And I'm going to say this variable is called variable which way. And now, instead of doing a random number, I'm going to do I random. And I random basically gives me an integer. Range 1, 2. That means I random range 1, 2 means I'm only going to get the number 1 or the number 2. Versus if I did random range 1 or 2, I could get 1.1, 1.2. Doesn't do us any good. Now that gives us a 50-50 chance. Now, half a 50-50 chance I don't care about. What do I mean by that? Well, if I say if which way is equal to 1, go positive. Well, I'm already positive, so I don't have to do anything there. So what I'm going to say is if what? If variable which way is equal to 2, then I'm going to come over here to my variable, and I'm going to say speed is equal to negative speed. Or I can say speed is equal to speed times -1. Changes the direction to negative. So now if I hit run, some of them should go up. Some of them went up, some of them went down, and that's all that matters. Let's do it again. Some of them, wait, did they all go up? Let's look at that again. Did they all go up? If which way equals 2, then speed equals negative speed. Did all of them go up? They shouldn't all go up. I think they all went up. So now I've got to put in my randomize just in case. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add one more function. And I'm going to put in that thing that makes it so that they don't randomize. And what randomize does is it gets rid of that thing so that every time I hit run, it'll be different every time. Let's take a look. All right, I wasn't paying attention, but let's do it again. It's really easy now. All I got to do is delete them all. Oh yeah, some went up, some went down. Let's take a look. Are some going up? Some are going up. Now let's look again. Are some going down? Yep, some are going down, some are going up. So yeah, this is actually working. A little bit more alive than it was before. So the randomize function works, and that's just a function we put in to make sure that the random number generator is random every time. But again, if I want to see something consistently, I would take that out. So to summarize, in our, oh my God, hour and a half long tutorial, which again, if you're watching, a lot of it's Photoshop, I can move up, 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 idle, 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 down, 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 idle, 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 shoot, 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 and they move, shoot, 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 shoot. So there you go. So this is what we've done so far. Next time we will animate the enemies. We will have the enemies fire back. We will start keeping score. We will start adding death animations in. We will put in the scoreboard. We will put in the lives. We will put in our intermediate things, win, lose, game over, instructions, credits, all the good stuff. We will finish this game, not in one more sitting, my God, no. But the idea being is this is where we're going. But the heart of the game is built. I mean, right now it's a shooting gallery. They don't shoot back, but it's a shooting gallery. And I can miss, which is terrible because I don't like to miss. And I can start deciding myself, is my hero bullet too big? Is my hero bullet too fast? Is the enemy too big? Is the enemy too... And as again, I'm trying to build character. If I just follow the directions, but I don't think about what I'm doing along the way, my game won't have character. If my game doesn't have character, then it's not much of a game. Anyway, my name is Jared Bendis. If you're watching me on Twitch, then I hope you follow me. If you're watching me on YouTube, then ring the bell or follow me there as well. There you go. I hope you enjoyed this. Follow me, like me, all the sort of good things. And please send me your feedback very much. Thank you and good night.